I'm not a huge fan of New Year's resolutions, um, but I think they have value. I talked to a bunch of my friends yesterday when I did one of those New Year's resolutions have no value, change my mind kind of things. I listened, and a bunch of my friends, they make New Year's resolutions, and apparently they keep them. I was under the impression that nobody kept their New Year's resolutions. Turns out a bunch of my friends make them and keep them. So I still don't like them personally, but I think they have value just based on my small little, survey, my small little poll yesterday from some trusted sources. I think for me, the reason why I don't favor New Year's resolutions is so much of my life is governed by commitments I've made and kept for, my entire adult life now. And so I don't want to say I'm all vowed out, but I've made some fairly serious commitments in my life, and I've kept them. And so I've got this, I'm sort of always doing a resolution. I've always got something that I'm doing that I'm really committed to. And so, my resolutions, largely, if I was going to make New Year's resolutions, it would probably be a pretty long list of all the things I already do that I want to keep doing. I'm not really looking to seriously change my life or reinvent myself or some such thing. I'm really happy with my lifestyle and my commitments and what I'm doing with my life. You chanting? Go chant your rounds, man. Get out of here. I mean, it's up to you, but do pick one or the other. You're not Hemalata Thakurani. You can't do both. Pick one or the other. Either one's fine. Hemalata Thakurani was a great Gaudiya Vaishnava some 300 years ago, and she was chanting japa while listening to class. And the speaker, Rupa Kaviraj, super pundit, he questioned her. And she said, no, I'm always chanting. I can hear your class, I'm always chanting. And he's like, you cannot do both. And anyway, he became a ghost. Because she was such a great devotee that she was able to double up without any reduction in her capacity to concentrate. And so he offended her. Fortunately for me, Dhameshwar is not Hemalata Thakurani. And so, in general, we want to be able to focus on what we're doing. Anyway, it's another thing. I want to be able to focus on what I'm doing, and I want to load myself up with a bunch of new things I'm going to do. I got my steady thing I'm doing. It's also the steady thing that most of you are doing. So what do? We are sober. That might not seem like a big deal. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me because I've been sober for my entire adult life and a little bit more. But for a lot of people, sobriety is a big deal. A lot of people struggle with sobriety. It's their poison. And it's to make a commitment, a lifetime commitment to being sober. It's no joke. And I'm super sober. I'm not just sober. I'm sober with a capital S. I don't even drink coffee or tea. Shazam. So there's sobriety. That's a big one. That's a big one. And then there's another big one. We have 4 regular principles, but in my mind, we really have 2. We really have 2. What's the other really big one? No sex outside of marriage. Celibacy or monogamy. That's a big deal. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm celibate, but then you find out they were masturbating like 8 minutes before you asked them the question. And they're nursing some kind of heavy porn, masturbation addiction thing. And when we say celibate, we don't mean celibate like that. We mean 100% cold turkey, do not pass go, do not collect $200 in the Hare Krishna prison, full celibacy. Which is liberating and invigorating and inspiring and lends dignity and authenticity and genuineness and power to everything you do. So yeah, that's the other big one. Now, if you really had to push me, the vegan thing is super important too. For me, it's almost like you're a non-human if you're not vegan. It's just like what kind of animal unnecessarily eats animals, causes unnecessary pain and suffering. So if somebody's like, I'm fully celibate and I'm fully sober, but I eat Big Macs, then I would, vomit on them and get super, super self-righteous and say, I retract. We actually have 3 really important ones. Then there's no gambling, which is a big deal for some people. Never was a big deal for me, and I generally don't know anybody who has a gambling addiction. And I counsel a lot of people. Nobody's like, oh man, I went and bought a lottery ticket. I'm like, I was jonesing. I went and shot craps. Nobody tells me that. People tell me all sorts of other stuff, usually around the first 2 I mentioned. Nobody's like, oh man, I fell down, ate some fish or ate some chicken. Usually we get that out of somebody's system real quick, and then that's it. That piece of the puzzle is over. Sometimes in the beginning, it's like, oh, I ate some, some donuts with eggs in them, or, I ate something without checking the ingredients, or something. Sometimes it happens in the beginning. But usually after we get your sea legs, then that's taken care of. Devotees are serious about it. And like I said, the gambling thing, I've never really hung in those Gamblers Anonymous circles. It was never my thing, and it was never a thing of any people I've hung out with. And so I know it exists, but it's so remote to my experience. After counseling so many people over so many decades, I don't think it's as big of a deal. And I suspect the people who are gambling addicts, they also struggle with some of the other stuff too, which becomes primary, and the gambling becomes a secondary addiction on top of their drug addiction. And probably if they went cold turkey sober, then their whole gambling thing would kind of just wouldn't make sense anymore. So, assuming that you don't have a gambling problem, and that's not your poison, assuming you're cool with your veganism, and that's just sort of your lifestyle, these 2 are big. Sobriety and celibacy/monogamy, which we could, if we wanted to give one word, it would be chastity. Chastity. So that's the do-nots. Then we got the do's. The do's are, we chant 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Maybe you can do it in 1 hour and 40. Maybe even 1 hour and 30. Usually not less than that. That's sometimes it takes you 2.5 hours. But we got, if we're going to go with the average, It's a 2-hour commitment, 7 days a week. That's no joke. What else do you do for 2 hours, 7 days a week? Think about it. Anybody work out 7 days a week for 2 hours a day? Nope. Shower. Go to the bathroom. Eat. 2 hours is a lot of time, isn't it? I mean, some people are on Instagram 2 hours a day, on TikTok 2 hours a day. But in terms of, there's a bit of like a zone out type thing going on. In terms of focused energy, giving your all, doing some committed activity. What is it that you guys have that you do every single day, 7 days a week, for 2 hours a day? I'm guessing nothing. That's a pretty major positive commitment that we make. Then I'm married. And I have children. That's another huge 7-day commitment. And so there's that too. That's another it's commitment on top of a commitment. And I'm happy in my marriage, but I don't take the whole marriage thing lightly. So even if I wasn't happy in my marriage, it doesn't really matter. For me, the marriage is a religious commitment. I'm lucky, I'm happy, and things are great. Wouldn't change it, even if you paid me. But it's still a commitment. I don't feel it. I don't feel any of these too much. They're just my lifestyle at this point. It's not like I'm just like white knuckling it anymore after 30 some odd years. It's just it's my lifestyle. But that's kind of a full schedule, right? Following the regular principles, chanting your rounds, being married, raising a family. It's a pretty big schedule. Then I worship the deity. I don't worship 7 days a week. I'm not on the altar 7 days a week, but 3 to 5. That's always there. Sometimes 7, sometimes multiple times a day, 7 days a week. Depends on what's going on. Then I teach. Committed to that. That's 4 or 5 days a week I teach. My whole life is filled with all these commitments, and they're all kind of extracurricular. Most people are committed to their job because they get a paycheck, they can't get out of it. But all of my commitments aren't things I get paid for. They're things that I do as, it's my religion. We can just call it a super important special interest group. And so it's a voluntary hobby, something that I'm really into, like Narayan's into LARP. It's like, this is my thing, You're like, what's LARP? If you know, you know. So then, it's a hobby. This is like what I do for fun. So I got all these big, huge commitments, and there's nobody standing over me, threatening to not pay me if I don't do it. This is just what I do for, you know what I mean? So for that reason, I'm more in this is my lifestyle, it's New Year's, it's Halloween, heaven burns, hell freezes over, I chant my rounds every day, I follow our rules, I'm committed. And so in some ways I want to avoid the New Year's resolution. It's naimittika, to use our technical term. It's an occasional thing. I'm into Nitya Seva, not Naimittika Seva. In deity worship, there's Nitya Seva. Nitya means eternal, but it also means daily in Sanskrit. And so there's the worship that you do every single day for the deities. Then there's Naimittika Seva, like different festivals and stuff like that happen occasionally and you do them, but they're not part of your daily program. My life is filled with Nitya Seva. I study every day. I teach every day. I counsel every day. 7 days a week, no break. I chant every day. I follow every day. I pray every day. And so I've got, the stuff I mentioned to you, but I've got other stuff. Studying, counseling, praying were some things I just added as I thought it through. Those are daily, 7 days a week. I go and see the deities every day, usually like multiple times. And shamelessly, we kind of want you guys to all do the same thing because you'll be happier if you do it. I don't regret any of this. Just regret I don't do a better job and a more focused job of doing it. I didn't start earlier and I don't do more. Doesn't feel like a burden. I'm grateful to be able to carry these commitments with me through life. I have no desire to give them up. I think this is the way to do it. To find the things that are precious, that are valuable, and then to always do them. Sanatana Goswami, in his auto commentary to the Hari Bhakti Vilas is a ritual text that we have. It's also super philosophical. It's where we get, anyway, so many of our rules for how to conduct an initiation ceremony and how to observe festivals. But it also includes tons of advice on what kind of japa beads to use and how to hold them in your fingers and what ekadasi consists of. And there's so many things in the text. It's an Archana Paddhati. It's a book of ritual worship. It's our Smriti Shastra. It's our specific sect's codification of our ritual tradition and our liturgical tradition. It's very liturgical, but it's highly philosophical as well. Liturgical means like resulting like the rituals that we do in our temples, in our homes. How to live the practical life of a priest. Sanatana Goswami largely compiled it. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was involved too. And then there's a commentary on it. Sanatana Goswami wrote a commentary to his own text. And in that commentary, he says, don't chant extra japa. That if you finish your prescribed number of rounds, do other services. Don't chant extra japa. Because if you chant extra japa when you're feeling groovy, then what will happen when you're feeling despondent? You'll chant less japa. And you'll go up and down and you won't be able to do what we do, which is chant every day. So I'm almost, the whole New Year's resolution thing, it's like I don't want to get too into that game. Make a resolution, change them every year, break them, don't succeed. I've got decades of keeping my resolutions. I don't want to mess that scene up by getting in this game, this dicey game of New Year's resolutions. Also, I'm not even sure this is the new year. There's that too. I mean, we have our traditional Panjika, our traditional calendar. We have a Gaudiya calendar, and in the Gaudiya calendar we follow Gaurabda. Gorabda means the year of Gor, the year of our Lord. So this whole calendar is based on the theorized idea of when Jesus took his birth, the year of our Lord. So we follow Gorabda. So right now we're in Gorabda 535. The 535th year after 1486, which was the year Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Jayapataka Maharaj, he really takes it seriously. Sometimes you'll see him in Mayapur in like late January, and Gaur Purnima is somewhere between late February and late mid-March. So the birthday of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is our next year, that's when our calendar changes on that day to Gorabda 536. So it'll become Gorabda 536 in March of this year, March 17th, I believe. Might be March 20th. So sometimes you'll see him in January and he'll be like, oh, I'm really busy. Let's talk next year. So if you're thinking from our point of view, that means next year, or we're in January, talk next year, it means like 12 months from now. Like, Maharaj, come on, we need to talk. But that could only be in 2 or 3 weeks because he goes based on Gorabda. It's cool, right? So we got our own calendars. I'm not even sure I'm into this whole year of our Lord, January 1st nonsense. And so, the Julian calendar into the Gregorian calendar, it's not my jam anyway. I'm a priest and my religion has their own calendar. So you really want to, better you take a vow on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthday for what you're going to follow that year. And that's our real year. But anyway, it's cool. Like, people are doing it and it's working for them, so I'm not hating it. I'm okay with it. I'm good. I'm not criticizing. But for me, as I start to think, why is it that I'm not so into it? I'm not so into it because I chant for 2 hours a day. I follow the 4 other principles. I worship the deity. I pray. I counsel. I manage. I take prasadam. I study 7 days a week, 365 days a year for my entire adult life. And so I just want to keep that train going. I think if you find something you fall in love with and you can just do it for the rest of your life, that's the go. That's you want. You want. Whole reinvent yourself every January 1st and wipe the slate clean. Like that sounds kind of pathetic to me, actually. Like what kind of trivial life are you doing? You want to change it up every year. So I think winning at the game of life is finding something that you love, committing to it, and then owning that commitment for the rest of your life. And what I want to talk about with the rest of our time together today is there's the verse in the Gita which is doubled. It's almost the entire verse is repeated twice. Is the verse where Krishna tells you to be a devotee, and that's the goal of life. He describes it as his param vacha, his greatest instruction, and his guhyatama, his greatest secret. He specifically mentions, I'm going to say it again, bhuyaha, I'm going to say it again. He says, I'm telling it to you because ishto asime dridham, because you're so very dear to me, iti, because you're so very dear to me. And he also says it's vakshami tehitam, he's saying it because it's for your benefit. So the most important teaching of the Gita is to be a devotee, as stated directly by Krishna when he says, this is my most important teaching, in a variety of ways. However, there is another verse in the Gita that shows up. It's almost twice. Like 2 lines of it are exactly the same. not all 4 lines. It's actually 2 lines. One line is the same. It's 2 quatrains, and the other line is not exactly the same, but it's pretty close, and so it's almost repeated twice. And it's way less sexy than Be a Devotee. It's way more material. It's way more nuts and bolts. And so that verse is Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Parodharmat Suanushtitat. Shreyan. Shreya means better in this context. Best, better, superior. Shreyan Swadharma Vigunaha. Viguna means badly, faultily. Shreyan Swadharma, better your own dharma faultily. Parodharmat Swanushtitat, than to follow another's dharma perfectly. Better do your own dharma faultily than somebody else's dharma really well. To follow it really well. Somehow I did a brain fart. Swabhavam niyatam karma kurvam na apnoti kilbisham. Swabhavam niyatam karma. To do this and be regulated in your actions in this way. If you act in this way according to your own dharma. Then kurvan. So if you're doing this karma according to your own nature, following your own nature, regulated by your own nature. Niyatam means regulated. It could also almost be like a vow. Like a niyam. It's like the same, niyatam, same root. So niyatam, regulated. Niyama, yama, niyama, rules and regulations in yoga philosophy. So this is the same root. Niyatam. Swabhava niyatam. Regulated by your own swabhava, your own nature. Karma kurvan. Working like that. Regulated according to your own nature by following your own dharma. Na apnoti kilbisham. You won't acquire any fault. You won't become degraded. You won't achieve degradation. You won't achieve dirt. That's what it says. So, Shreyan Swadharma Vigunaha. Better your own dharma faultily, parodharmat suanushtitat, than to follow someone else's dharma really well. Swabhava niyatam karma kurvan. If you act regulated by your own nature, nabnoti kilbisham, then you don't become contaminated by some stain. And kilbisha probably means, I think it means stain. You don't become stained. That verse shows up twice. Nothing to do with bhakti. Now we could make it have something to do with bhakti. What's the Jaiva Dharma? What's the Dharma of the soul? To love and serve Krishna. Therefore, everyone has that same Dharma. And whatever your external Dharma is that you do in this world, your primary Dharma as a soul is to love Krishna. And therefore, this verse indicates bhakti. Did you guys follow that? Did you follow that? Yeah. So that's it's not too difficult to take what Krishna says out of context and then make the raw structure of the verse work for promoting devotional service. But contextually, when Krishna's talking about this, he's telling Arjuna to fight or follow his Kshatriya Dharma. And so it's very this worldly, this instruction. It's very this worldly. I think if you do this, it makes spiritual life a heck of a lot easier. we spend a lot of time, dharma here, I'm going to just say your job. The word dharma also means your job or your career. It's a complicated term from the Sanskrit root dri, which means to hold or to carry. It carries your existence. Dharma is usually modified by adjectives. So you have your kula dharma, your family dharma, your jati dharma, your tribe's dharma, your community dharma. You have your varna dharma, depending on whether you're a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. You have your ashram dharma, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. You have your sanatan dharma, your eternal dharma. Usually there's an adjective in front of dharma and that tells you what your dharma is. So varna ashram dharma means your ashram dharma and your varna dharma. So varna dharma means, according to whether you're a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, and that is your job. That's your career. Are you a priest? Are you an administrator? Are you a mercantile person, a business person? Or do you work for somebody else and they pay you and you got that security? If you work for somebody else and they pay you and you want that security, you are a Shudra. Shudras get paychecks. It's too freaky. It's too scary. They don't want to do business on their own. They just want a paycheck. They don't want to stress. Makes you a Shudra. Some people couldn't stand to work for a paycheck. They want to gamble it. They want to do business. They want to find an angle and make a bunch more money, make a way better ROI, return on their investment by playing the game. Then you are a Vaishya. That's right. Shudra, Vaishya. And sometimes you want to just control things, control people, control systems. You want to manage, you want to be in charge. It's your nature to govern. It's your nature to be in charge of things. And if you do that, you're a Kshatriya. Those guys also do violence. They manage the violence in society. They commit violence to protect others. And then finally you have the teachers, the Brahmins. These Varnas, they kind of work with the three estates of traditional estates of Europe. Their mistake was they mixed the serfs and the bourgeois together into one caste. Doesn't really work. It's just kind of a natural order of things. If you look, you'll find people fit into these categories anyway. You go back to the Republic, Plato's Republic. He got into this stuff also. He had three castes. People try to break down the world and the natural order of things, a scala naturae, a natural order of things. You find some of this stuff always comes up as just kind of the basic career arcs, what people do for money, how they maintain themselves. So I think that as a devotee, as a human being, it is important to figure out what you're going to do for money. And ideally what you should do for money should be something that you feel good about, so that your job does not unnecessarily stress you out and ruin your quality of life. You ideally want to have a job or a career not based on what's going to make you a ton of money, but based on what's going to make you peaceful, what you're going to be able to do and feel good about and not hate my life and not, I can't wait to get out of here. You want to find something you can do where you're like, yeah, this works for me. I feel good doing this. I enjoy doing this. Because if you do that, you're following Krishna's instruction. But what's really happening is you're going to be peaceful, and your work isn't going to stress you out so much that you can't follow the important stuff, which are the earlier vows I talked about. If you're doing some job you hate, you have this high stress level, this high level of dissatisfaction in your life, and you're spending a significant amount of time doing something you think is useless and worthless, that you really don't enjoy doing, that's not your nature, that's unnatural for you. And it means that, every hour you spend doing that costs you 3 hours of peace. And it's unsustainable. And then you end up doing other things to compensate for that, and to cope with that, and to de-stress yourself. And then that starts to get in the way of a good spiritual life, like I just talked about. So we got to find a career, our little niche, our little corner of the world, the marketplace, where we can do a job that we enjoy doing. Like Kat's a fireman. Kanai's a fireman. He loves being a fireman. I mean, I love being a fireman. Are you kidding me? Like I might pay money to go to a fireman camp. You know what I mean? Like a fireman vacation or something like that. He loves doing his job. It's like suffering. It's really hard work. But every time I ask him, I go, was that fun? He's like, oh my God, man. It's like the best thing ever. I don't absolutely love owning a restaurant. I do love tweaking things and making them work and making them run nicely. I like to tinker with things and make them run really well. And I have absolutely no handyman skills whatsoever. My dad was an architect with the best penmanship you've ever seen and the straightest hand you've ever seen. He was such a meticulous person, and he was an expert handyman. So he fixed everything. When I would do school projects, like we had to do a school project, I had to go to San Luis Obispo. I did a school project on the San Luis Obispo mission. So my dad drove us up there. They had a waterfall urinal at the fancy restaurant we ate at while we were up there. It wasn't at the mission. It was the restaurant we ate at up there. I remember it was the first time I'd ever seen it. I was 9. I can remember this fancy waterfall urinal. Like a big black wall, and then it was just constant water going down. It was kind of crazy. It's all right, it's kind of cool. Some bougie restaurant we went to. I remember that my brother had Foreigner, I think it's called Foreigner 4 is the name of the album. It's the album with Jukebox Hero on it and some other great songs. I remember listening to that in the car with my mom and dad and my 2 brothers as we drove up to the mission together to spend the weekend, because my dad went up there and he got the schematics of the mission. And then I went to school in 4th grade as a 9-year-old. I went to school with a scaled clay model of the entire mission. My dad owned his own architecture firm, so he had his whole staff and us working on it. He got the schematics of the place, and then we went down and he chose clay as the appropriate medium for us to do this out of. And then he constructed this thing out of clay. And then he went to the store and bought little animals and stuff like that. So it was a clay model, but it had the trees and the animals and stuff and I brought it. And I always got an A-. I never got an A+. Because they had to give me an A because it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. You know what I mean? But they gave me an A- because it was totally clear that my dad had done the entire thing. I wouldn't even do anything. I would just sit there while he worked. That was my, the job was I would sit there while he worked, and so he'd have me try, he'd ask me to do something, and I'd mess it up and have to redo it. And then so what I recall from my childhood, every school project was me just sitting there while my dad did the work. We would do the Pinewood Derby. You guys know what that is. In the Boy Scouts, you have a huge monster track that they travel around with. It's a gravity track. And then you make a car out of balsa wood, and then you're allowed to put a certain amount of weights in the car. It has to weigh a certain amount. And then you try to make the car as aerodynamic and ergonomically made as possible. Maybe ergonomic is the wrong word, but as aerodynamically made as possible. And then you race the cars. We won every year. We won every year because my dad would study, aerodynamics and how to make the car most aerodynamic and exactly where to place the weights so that it wasn't too front heavy, but it wasn't like so we would just win every time. So yeah. So I suck at doing anything at all handyman-esque. I'm not good at it. But I like tinkering with things. But when I say tinkering with things, I mean systems and the way things operate and managing a temple and different departments and a restaurant and people. And I like to control and manipulate, not manipulate like in the sense of exploit, but manipulate in the sense of tweak and adjust and make it all run smoothly. So the restaurant thing's actually pretty good for me. Because I got a good manager. I can jump in and get involved a little bit and make some little adjustments and give some direction and look at it and study it a little bit and then make it run smoothly. But I don't particularly love my career. What I have done is I try to work as little as humanly possible at my career. My goal is to work as little as possible. I don't believe in passive income, but I believe in trying to get pretty damn close. Get stuff running real smooth and get those plates spinning and then have your dinner and every once in a while and then get back to what you're doing, and then I have a really rich non-financial life. I have a really rich life where I counsel and help people and organize things so they go on nicely for the deities, for the devotees. And so I take my nature and I use it in my religious life, my church life, my extracurricular, my special interest. But I just try to spend as much time as possible doing my real life, which is devotional service and helping, being part of a mission. I think there's two things you do. Either A, you find a career that you enjoy doing, and then you feel like you work every day, but you didn't go to work because you love what you do. That is not my model. My model is I find something to do and I use my skill set to make that thing work. But I really just try to do as little as possible there so I can spend as much time as possible doing what I love doing, which is my spiritual life. I try to merge them. I got deities at my restaurant. We make an offering every day. I give charity. So I'm always trying to do devotional service through we sell prasadam. I'm always trying to do some kind of devotional service in my work. I try to merge those things together, my spiritual life and my career. I try to merge those things together. But although I do that, I don't feel like, okay, that's done. My real thing is I love doing devotional service and being part of a mission and helping people and making things nice for Krishna. And then whatever time I need to spend over here doing this, I try to merge it so that this is tolerable. Does that make sense? So most people should not follow my path. Most people should figure out what you love doing and figure out a way to monetize it. Two things. Figure out what you love doing, what your nature is. It might not even be what you love doing. You might not even think you love it, but you need to do it. It's your nature. It's what you're put on this earth to do. What are your natural God-given talents? What are you good at? What are you excellent at? And then find a way to monetize that. That's number 2. So figure out what is your nature, what's your swabhav, and therefore that teaches you what is your dharma, what's your swadharma. Swa means own. Your own dharma, your own nature. And then figure out a way to monetize that. Option 2 is spend as little time in this world doing that as you have to, and then have a hobby that totally fulfills you. There's 2 options. I could own a prasadam restaurant, but I could just as easily own some other something that I tweaked with. And it would probably be, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be as much. I mean, we are worshiping deities and serving people prasadam. It's not lost on me. But I've done other businesses, and they were about the same thing. I do whatever I have to do to make it work, and then spend a lot of time at the temple doing service. Every day of my life, I thank Krishna for my life. I thank the deities for my life every day. Not like a rule. It happens naturally every day. I thank the deities for my life. I express gratitude, and I let them know that I don't take it for granted, and I value it, and that I want to show them how much I value it, so that they'll let me just keep doing what I've done forever, what I'm doing forever. Anyway, this is like the only verse in the Gita, other than the one I quoted you, the main only verse in the Gita is repeated twice. This one's kind of half repeated twice. Shreyan swadharma viguna, paro dharma swanushtita. Better to do your own dharma faultily than somebody else's perfectly. Swabhava niyatam karma kurvam napnoti kilbisham. You don't stain yourself if you act according to your nature, if you're governed by your nature. I think that's a great meditation for a new year. Let me think about who I am and what I do and what I'm about and what fulfills me and what I was put on God's green earth to do. And let me figure out a way that I can marry my life to that. I can merge that with my life. Either through a super rich extracurricular life or through finding a career that is fulfilling, that is who I am, that's what I do. And I don't think everybody knows what they were put on God's green earth to do either, materially. I don't think everybody knows what their natural skills are, what they're good at, what's natural. It might even be, it's like what you're good at, what comes natural to you. It might not even be what you like doing, you just have to do it. Like the world's filled with managers. Like, I hate managing. But then if you stick them in any situation, they immediately have to manage it and fix it and make it right. It's like, I don't like managing. I just want to go be on a beach in the Bahamas somewhere. But then you put them on the beach in the Bahamas, like, okay, we got to clean this beach up and let's get this place regulated. We can build some homes here. There's a lot of money to be made here. They're immediately just trying to figure it out. You follow? There's a lot of money means you're a Vaishya. If it's there's too many people getting drunk here, we need to go to the city and pass some rules and regulations to govern this, and we need to mobilize some sort of neighborhood watch type program to assist the police because they're spread too thin. And let's raise some money for them and get them to beach cruisers as well. And you know what I mean? Then you're a kshatriya. Or a busybody, right? With nothing else going on in your life. But everybody's got a nature. What is it? What is it that drives you? Do you love peace? Do you like to be by yourself? You start with kind of these questions, right? Who am I? What makes me tick? When do I feel comfortable? When do I feel like all is right with the world? When do I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? What comes naturally to me? What do I find myself doing automatically? When I look at my life over a broad swath of time and space, what do I find myself coming back to again and again? What kind of mind do I have? What kind of body do I have? What are my natural, within my real intelligence taxonomy? What is it that I'm particularly gifted at intellectually? And then let that govern me, and let me try to make money doing something related to that, even if it's a little bit outside the box of what I thought I'd want to do. Let me be governed by my nature. Let me be governed by my psychophysical nature, so I can be peaceful and I can be doing what I was put on this earth to do, so it won't stress me out, so I can do my real thing, which is the nature of my soul, which is follow all those rules that shouldn't change year to year. Those things shouldn't change year to year. And most people would be better off focusing on those things. Less about I'm going to work out 4 times a week, and more on let me chant 16 rounds a day. Let me chant 4 rounds a day every day. Let me follow the 4 good principles strictly. Let me make those my vows for the year. And then I'll work out as much as I possibly can. But if it's like New Year's, it's like the important thing. That's when you're setting your important goals. Then it tells you what your value system is by the goals you set. And so if your goals aren't related to your spiritual life, what does it mean? It means you privilege your material life above your spiritual life. You guys following this? So for me, when it comes to the vow thing and what am I committed to, that's always I start with my spiritual life, and then everything else kind of works itself out. And I still go on diets and still exercise and still push myself to do stuff and still push myself to be better and try to start new projects and this and that. But I'm not waiting for New Year so I can reinvent myself, wipe the slate clean, get away from my past, start from scratch. I'm trying never to drop that ball and just keep things running for my whole life. Anyway, those are some thoughts I had. Think about New Year's. Thought of a verse in the Gita I think is meaningful. I want to give something practical as a meditation for the new year, things that I think all of you would do well to look at. What is your nature? If you're crazy, you can't know what your nature is. Then we gotta calm you down because you're crazy. You got delusions of grandeur. You're crazy. You got some issue. You got MPD or whatever you got that you're dealing with. Then we got to regulate that. Get you on some good medication. Get you some therapy. And then once you sober yourself up from your intoxicated state of poor mental health, then we can start talking about this. If you're too addicted and you're too filled with vices, we can't help you either because you're way too strung out on that stuff. You can't think clearly. You can't know your nature. So it's not even like this comes free. Figuring out what your nature is requires you to deal with your mental illness, requires you to deal with your vices, and get those massive intoxicating factors out of your life so that you can think more dispassionately and objectively about it. Anyway, those are some thoughts. Thank you, IGTV. And you guys can stay on Facebook if you want it for a sec. Give me some feedback.